There are clearly two things you guys need to know about me. Number one, I like the color blue quite a bit. And number two, there is definitely a little thing we could do here. If you guys see the reflection. Yes, eat the monster. Now that we have that out of the way, I want to teach you guys the first big thing. I am a lazy dude. I've always looked for what's the easiest way to get the biggest benefit. And in exercise, I found nothing different with my personality. I have always been trying to discover what's the least amount of exercise I can do, what's the least amount of effort I can put into it physically to get the most benefit. And a lot of times I've found that comes with being mentally very engaged with exercise, and physically you can take a break. So let's look at this graph real quick. And we look over here, this is the length of your muscle. So for instance, if we were looking at a bicep curl, if we're looking at something like this, when my biceps are very short, like in this position here, versus when my biceps are very long, which is in that position there. So this is going to be my shortened bicep, and this is going to be my long bicep. Does that make sense? And then up here, we're going to talk about our ability to control our muscles. And when I say control, I mean feel, I mean communicate. I'm going to abbreviate that as COM for you guys. So when we look at muscle length and how it relates to how well you can control the muscle, we find something super, super interesting. The longer a muscle is, the less communication you have with it, and the shorter the muscle is, the more communication you have with it. You never cramp in a muscle when you're bringing it to its lengthened position. So in this position, my back muscles are the ones that are going to cramp if I keep going, not my chest muscles most often. In this position, right here is where my bicep will cramp. My tricep is not the one that cramps here. Whereas if I come out here and I lock out my elbow, my tricep is the one that's most often going to cramp, not my bicep, assuming you cramp at all. So when we look at this, it provides a really interesting context on how we can change exercise to get the most out of it. So this is like the first thing that I learned from some early teachers that really started changing the game for me. So I realized, okay, if I want to feel muscles, I need to shorten them, and if I don't want to feel them, I need to lengthen them. This brought me to a lot of other discoveries. The first of which is another graph. And this is where we talk about the true strength of a muscle. So if we use the same length down here, this is short, and this is long, same exact concept, short and long on whatever muscle it is all around your body. And then here we look at total force, or this is like true strength. You know, how much total tension can the muscle produce? How much weight can it resist? So in this scenario, I knew that to grow muscle or to be fit, I had to be strong and I had to get stronger. And to do that, I had to challenge my muscles. Now I call it more stimulating the muscles, but I knew at that point in time I needed to do something that was hard for them so that they could get better, right? Now that we know that this background graph up here with communication looks something like that, we know that strength or force production looks something like this. Interesting. So somewhere near the middle of the range of the muscle, you find that it has the most force output. However, when we look at communication, you get the most at the end range of the muscle. So I'll do a little dotted line here so you guys can see the communication graph. So then the question was, why would I ever go down to this side of it? And that is something we can talk about in a further video. For most people, like me, I want to look good. I want to, maybe have a six-pack. I want to feel good. I don't need to be crazy good looking. I don't need to feel like I'm going to win a gold medal tomorrow. And I don't want to invest more than an hour a day into my exercise. I developed a routine for a couple years where I stuck to this section of the graph, knowing this information. And what I found was it was super beneficial. I did lose some strength benefits for some untold reasons that we can explain in a further video, but this is definitely where 80% of my routine comes from now, where I don't have to do this section most of the time. I only do it some of the times. I work with extreme injuries, and I'm only able to do that because I understand those two graphs. Seriously, those two graphs alone can help wonders when you're working with injuries. And what this means is at the beginning of a set, let's say you're going to do bicep curls. So if you're going to do a bicep curl, and this is somebody's arm, this is their bicep, right? And then this is like their forearm, and this is their hand holding a dumbbell. Got it. So this is our cool dumbbell up through here. Someone's doing a bicep curl. For 80% of the repetitions, especially when they fatigue, because as they fatigue, communication gets worse and strength gets worse, I have them shorten the range. So the first, if this is our 90 degrees, I might have someone do 75 degrees as their max range of motion when we're loading bicep curls, when we're doing actual weight. And then I'm going to have them shorten the range as they fatigue. So as they get more and more tired, I might have someone go to something like that, where it's like, say, 55 degrees range of motion, and then a 45 degrees range of motion. Now, if someone's trying to gain muscle, I'm usually going to have them sit in this middle range. So maybe come up somewhere between like 30 degrees of motion to 55 degrees of motion and sit between those two at the end of their set. Because there, you've got decent communication. It's not phenomenal, because obviously in the short range, we get more so you can feel it more. But we do get a lot more force production in that mid-range if you refer back to the previous graph. So remember, this is what we're working with. We're doing this guy on our strength, and we're doing this guy on our communication. So when we start, I might have them use the full length of this, or pretty close to it. So I might cut them off right about there, which is this 75 degrees and above in the bicep curl shortened range. So it would look something like that going all the way, but obviously coming down at this angle. And then as they get weaker and weaker, I would have them go further and further this way if they're injured. And if they're trying to gain mass, or if they're a pretty fit person, I might have them sit in this middle range here so that we can really use that strength component where you get the most force production, so they can fatigue the fastest, do the least amount of work, get the most amount of done in the smallest amount of time. Boom!